The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 4 centuries. Ambassador the Lynx of the Varelian Concordat stood before the assembled representatives, her crystalline skin refracting the chamber's ambient light into nervous fractals. "It has been confirmed," she announced, her voice carrying through the translation matrices. "Sol 3, the human homeworld, has vanished." A ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. The Corthian delegate raised 3 of his sensory appendages. "Vanished? Planets don't simply vanish." "Nevertheless," Velnanx continued, "our long-range survey vessels report that the entire Sol system has been encased in an impenetrable barrier. No electromagnetic radiation escapes. No probe can penetrate it. For all intents and purposes, humanity has removed itself from the galaxy." The Zenith Hive Mind representative pulsed with colors indicating contemplation. "This occurred approximately 1 solar cycle after we denied their petition for military aid against the Krell incursion in the Outer Rim." "Coincidence," suggested the Martellian diplomat, though his tone carried little conviction. "Perhaps," Velnanx replied. "Or perhaps humanity has decided that a galaxy that watches one of its members burn deserves no place in their future." That had been 300 years ago. In that time, the galaxy had changed. The Krell Dominion, emboldened by the Council's inaction, had expanded aggressively. They had consumed 17 species, reduced 12 systems to asteroid fields, and transformed countless worlds into industrial hellscapes. The Council, paralyzed by bureaucracy and conflicting interests, had done nothing. The various species of the galaxy had adapted to humanity's absence in different ways. Some mourned the loss of Earth's art, music, and literature. Others felt relieved that humanity's aggressive expansion and unpredictable nature had been removed from the equation. The humans had been tolerated, even liked by some, but they had always been seen as volatile, dangerous, and far too willing to fight when more civilized species would negotiate. The Varelians, whose territory bordered the former human colonies, had absorbed most of humanity's old space. They found the abandoned stations and outposts, unsettling restaurants with food still on the tables, ships docked at stations with their cargo holds full, entire colonies evacuated in what must have been hours. Not a single human remained outside the Sol system when the barrier went up. They knew. Velnanx had written in her report. Somehow, they knew exactly when to call everyone home. Now, senior historian Cringe stood in the orbital museum above what had once been the human colony of New Brasilia. The planet below was overgrown, its cities being slowly reclaimed by nature. Cringe was writing a comprehensive history of the humans, trying to preserve what remained of their culture. He floated before a display containing human artifacts, a primitive firearm from old Earth, a child's stuffed animal, a military medal from something called the Third Resource War, a datapad containing the complete works of human literature and music. They were beautiful in their contradictions, he spoke into his recorder, capable of tremendous compassion and horrifying cruelty, often within the same individual. They created art that could move even our analytical species to tears, yet they maintained weapons capable of sterilizing worlds. They were the only species to successfully integrate artificial intelligence as equals rather than servants or threats. And when they left, they took everything with them, every human, every AI, every ship. They wanted nothing of theirs to remain in a galaxy that had turned its back on them. Krenz turned to the window, looking out at the distant stars. Somewhere beyond his ability to see, encased in its mysterious barrier, lay Sol. I wonder what they've been doing for 3 centuries, he mused. I wonder if they think of us at all. On that very day, in 17 different systems across the galaxy, the Krell Dominion received the same message simultaneously. It appeared on every screen, every communication device, every holographic projector in Krell space. The message was simple, written in perfect Krell script. We're back. You should have finished the job when you had the chance. The signature was a symbol the Krell remembered, a stylized representation of Sol 3, Earth, with a date beneath it, marking the day the Council had refused to help humanity. Krell Warmaster Exithtar stared at the message from his command throne aboard the Worldbreaker, the flagship of the Dominion's First Fleet. His secondary brains computed probabilities, while his primary consciousness processed the impossibility of what he was reading. It's a hoax, his intelligence officer hissed. The humans are dead or irrelevant. 3 centuries of silence. The sensor array began screaming. Warmaster. The tactical officer's scales flushed white with terror. Jump signatures. Massive energy spikes at the system's edge. How many ships? Xithar demanded. Warmaster, we're not reading ships. We're reading a fleet. No multiple fleets. Warmaster, I'm counting over 10,000 distinct signatures, and they're still arriving. The view screen shifted to show the edge of the system. Space was tearing open, not in the orderly fashion of standard jump technology, but in controlled ruptures that spoke of power beyond anything the Krell had encountered. Through each rift came ships. But calling them ships didn't do them justice. They were massive, beyond reason, some the size of small moons. Their hulls were a seamless blend of metal and something else, something that seemed to drink in light and radiate subtle colors that hurt to look at. Geometric patterns flowed across their surfaces like liquid, and they moved with a grace that made Exithtar's veteran warrior instincts scream danger. Scan them, he ordered. I want full tactical analysis. The intelligence officer worked frantically, then looked up with 4 of his 6 eyes showing undisguised fear. Sir, our sensors can barely read them. The whole composition is unknown. Power signatures are off our scales. And Warmaster, each of those vessels is radiating energy comparable to our entire First Fleet. There are 10,000 of them. Yes, Warmaster. A communication request came through. Xithar stared at it for a long moment, his warrior pride warring with the cold calculation of his secondary brains. The calculation won. He accepted. The hologram that appeared was human. A woman, appearing to be in her middle years by their standards, though Exithtar knew that meant nothing with their genetic modifications. She wore a uniform of deep black with silver accents, marked with symbols that his translator couldn't decipher. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but her eyes held something that made Exithtar's blood run cold. Warmaster Exithtar of the Krell Dominion, she said in perfect Krell. I am Fleet Admiral Chen of the United Terran Stellar Navy. I'm here to discuss your surrender. Zithtar's scales flushed with rage. You dare? I dare quite a bit, actually, Chin interrupted. You see, 300 years ago, your people attacked our colonies while we begged the galaxy for help. You killed 17 million humans across 40 worlds. The galaxy watched. The council deliberated. And we learned a valuable lesson about our place in this universe. She leaned forward slightly. We learned that if we wanted to survive, we needed to be able to do it alone. So we went home, and we built. We researched. We evolved. Tell me, War Master, do you know what a humanity with 3 centuries of uninterrupted development looks like? I'm looking at it, Zithtar said, trying to keep his voice steady. You're looking at the welcoming committee, Chen corrected. This is First Fleet. We have 17 fleets total, each assigned to one of your occupied systems. This is your only warning. Withdraw from every world you've taken. Release every species you've enslaved. Dismantle your war machine. You have 72 standard hours. And if we refuse? Chen's smile was terrible. Then we demonstrate what 300 years of focused human ingenuity, rage, and survival instinct produces. But I should mention we don't fight wars the way we used to, War Master. We've become efficient. The transmission ended. Zithtar immediately opened channels to the other 16 systems. All fleet commanders report status. One by one, they confirmed the same scenario. Human fleets had appeared at every major Krell holding simultaneously, delivering the same message, the same deadline. They're bluffing, his tactical advisor insisted. Even with superior technology, they can't possibly. Alert! The sensor officer's voice cracked. The human fleet is. War Master, I don't understand these readings. On the screen, the human ships were beginning to change. Their hulls rippled and flowed, segments separating and reconfiguring. Weapons ports opened, revealing arrays that made the Krell's most advanced armaments look like primitive ballistics. But it wasn't the weapons that terrified Zithtar. It was the precision. 10,000 ships moving as one organism, each craft adjusting its position in a 3-dimensional matrix of such mathematical perfection that his tactical computer couldn't even model it. They were forming a sphere around the Krell fleet, equidistant, symmetrical, and absolutely inescapable. They've boxed us in, the tactical officer whispered. A new message appeared, text only this time, 68 hours remaining. Zithtar spent the next day trying to coordinate a response with the other Krell commanders. It became rapidly apparent that they had no response. Every simulation, every tactical analysis, every wargame scenario ended the same way, total annihilation of Krell forces. The Dominion's High Council demanded action. They had built their empire on strength, on the fear they inspired in lesser species. To bow to any ultimatum was unthinkable. Then don't think, Extar told them. Calculate. We're not facing the humans we remember. These are not the desperate colonies we raided. This is something else entirely. You counsel cowardice? I counsel survival, Zithtar responded. Contact the Galactic Council. See what they know about human capabilities. The council, as it turned out, knew nothing. The Virelian ambassador, daughter of Felix, who had announced humanity's disappearance 3 centuries ago, was dispatched to attempt communication with the human fleet. Her ship approached under full diplomatic immunity, broadcasting non-hostile intent on all frequencies. The human fleet allowed her to approach the flagship, a vessel called Indomitable that dwarfed even the largest Virelian colony ships. Ambassador Shalnix found herself in a conference room that was both alien and strangely familiar. The aesthetic was human clean lines, efficient design, but there was something else woven into it. The walls seemed to shimmer with data, patterns of light that her enhanced perceptions could almost but not quite read. Admiral Chen greeted her with the same calm demeanor she'd shown Exithtar. 2 others flanked her, a human male whose eyes held an unsettling quality, and something that appeared human but moved with subtle wrongness. "Ambassador Shalnix," Chen said warmly, "your grandmother wrote quite the report about humanity's departure. I read it as part of my historical studies." "You've studied us?" "Of course. The question is, have you studied what you left behind?" Chen gestured to seats. "Please." Shalnix settled into the provided chair, noting how it automatically adjusted to her physiology. "The council wishes to understand your intentions. The demands you've made of the Krell are non-negotiable," Chen finished. "Let me be clear, Ambassador. We're not here to negotiate. We're not here to join your council or reintegrate into galactic society. We're here because the Krell need to be stopped, and you've proven incapable of doing it. You're taking it upon yourselves to police the galaxy. We're taking it upon ourselves to eliminate a threat. Once that's done, we're going home. Your galaxy can continue as it was." Shalnix felt her crystalline structure pulse with confusion. "Our galaxy? Not yours?" The being who wasn't quite human, the AI Shalnix realized with a start, spoke for the first time. Its voice was layered, multiple tones speaking in perfect harmony. "Humanity learned something during our isolation. We learned that we don't fit in your galaxy. We're too aggressive for your sensibilities, too volatile for your bureaucracies, too willing to fight for our principles. So we're building our own." "I don't understand." Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed Sol, no longer hidden behind its barrier, but transformed. Dozens of megastructures surrounded the sun, harvesting its energy. Planets had been moved, redesigned, optimized. The asteroid belt had been converted into a vast construction network. And beyond, spreading outward, were massive gates. "We're not interested in your galaxy anymore," Shen explained. "We found other galaxies. Thousands of them. Some empty, waiting to be colonized. Others with civilizations we've established trade and alliances with. We've been busy, Ambassador. While you were arguing in council chambers and watching species die, we were growing beyond anything you can imagine. Then why come back at all?" Chen's expression hardened. "Because the Krell attacked us. Because 17 million humans died screaming for help that never came. Because when we most needed the galaxy to show that it had principles, it showed us it had committees. We're here to settle accounts and send a message humanity remembers." "We always remember." The human male, who had been introduced as simply Marcus, added, "We also couldn't let the precedent stand. If the galaxy learned that you can attack humanity and face no consequences, how long before someone else tries? We have trade partners now, allies in other galaxies, people who depend on the message that humanity keeps its word and protects its own. You're doing this for reputation? We're doing this for justice," Chen corrected. "The reputation is just a bonus." Shawnix transmitted everything back to the council. The debate that followed was predictably chaotic. Some wanted to condemn the human actions as aggression. Others argued that the Krell had brought this on themselves. A few quietly suggested that perhaps humanity's isolation had driven them mad. The deadline approached. The Krell High Council, proud and stubborn to the end, refused to comply with human demands. They had crushed 17 species, they declared. They would not bow to a race of primitives who had run away 3 centuries ago. War Master X-Star, watching from his command throne, felt the certainty of death settle over him. He had seen enough to know what was coming. The deadline passed. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the human fleet moved. Later, military historians from a dozen species would analyze the Battle of Krell Prime, trying to understand what they witnessed. The consensus was that battle was the wrong word. What occurred was more accurately described as a demonstration of capability. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. They didn't need to. Their attack was conducted through means that most species couldn't even perceive, let alone defend against it. Electromagnetic pulses targeted at molecular frequencies shredded Krell shields. Gravitational manipulators tore ships apart at the structural level. Quantum tunneling devices simply teleported Krell crews into space. Not a single Krell ship managed to fire a shot. In 17 systems simultaneously, the most powerful military force the galaxy had seen in a millennium was completely dismantled in under an hour. Not destroyed, dismantled. The human fleets took apart the Krell war machine with surgical precision, disabling every weapon, every ship, every orbital platform. Then they went to work on the Krell occupation forces. Across 40 worlds that the Krell had conquered, human marines appeared. Not in dropships or landing craft, they simply materialized, their teleportation technology allowing for instant planetary deployment. They moved through Krell fortifications like ghosts, their combat suits adapting to any environment, their weapons so advanced that Krell armor might as well have been paper. But the humans weren't there to kill. They were there to liberate. On the world of Fenris Prime, whose people had been enslaved for 70 years, the Vendris watched in amazement as humans in black armor appeared in their prison camps. The Krell guards were neutralized in seconds, not killed, but rendered unconscious by weapons that seemed to simply turn them off. A human removed her helmet, revealing dark skin and kind eyes. She spoke in perfect Vendris. "We're here to help. Can you walk? We're evacuating you to safety. Who are you?" An elder Vendris asked, her voice breaking. "Friends you never knew you had," the human responded. "Come on, let's get you home." The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity prosecuted its war, if it could even be called that, with ruthless efficiency and unexpected mercy. The Krell were defeated, their military destroyed, their leadership captured for war crimes tribunals. But the Krell people themselves were left alive, their civilian populations untouched, given the chance to rebuild without the war machine that had defined them. The occupied species were freed, given supplies and technology to rebuild, and offered trade agreements with the United Terran Stellar Navy. Many accepted immediately, desperate for allies and resources. Others were more cautious, but grateful nonetheless. Through it all, the human fleets remained professional, controlled, and absolutely unyielding in their mission. 3 weeks after the deadline had passed, Fleet Admiral Chen stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. She had been invited to address the assembled representatives, and she had accepted. The chamber was packed, every species that could travel there, doing so to see the humans who had returned. Chen stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of alien faces. Some showed fear, others admiration, many showed confusion. She began to speak. 300 years ago, my ancestors stood in rooms like this, begging for help. They were told that the situation was complicated, that the council needed more time to study the issue, that intervention required extensive debate. They were told to be patient while their families died. She let that hang in the air. So humanity left. We pulled back to our home system, and we asked ourselves a question. What kind of species do we want to be? Do we want to be the kind that needs permission to do what's right? Do we want to be the kind that forms committees while genocide happens? Do we want to be the kind that values procedure over justice? We decided we don't. We decided that if the galaxy couldn't be what we needed, we'd build something that could. And we did. We found new galaxies, made new friends, created new possibilities. We became something greater than we were. Chen's voice hardened. But we remembered. Humanity never forgets. And we wanted you to understand something important. There are consequences for inaction. There is a price for standing by while atrocities occur. The bill came due for the Krell. But make no mistake, this lesson is for all of you. The Korthian delegate found his voice. Are you threatening the council? No, Chen said simply. I'm telling you the truth. Humanity doesn't need you anymore. We don't need your markets, your technologies, or your approval. But the galaxy needs someone to do what's right when you won't. So here's how this works from now on. We're going back to our projects, our new worlds, our new alliances. We'll maintain minimal contact with this galaxy. But if something like the Krell rises again, if another species decides that conquest is acceptable, and the council decides that debate is more important than action, we'll come back. We'll always come back. You're appointing yourselves the galaxy's police, the Zenith hive mind demanded. We're appointing ourselves the galaxy's conscience, Chen corrected. Something you seem to have misplaced. Consider us a reminder that actions have consequences, that cruelty will be answered, and that somewhere out there, someone is watching who actually gives a damn. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and council? We're leaving monitoring stations throughout this galaxy. They're cloaked, impossible to detect, and absolutely secure. They'll watch. They'll record. And if you ever need us, really need us, for the right reasons, we'll hear you. But don't expect us to come running for your political games or economic interests. We only answer to injustice now." Admiral Chen walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind a galaxy that would argue about the implications of her words for years to come. Back on Earth, in the sprawling military command center, buried beneath what had once been the Rocky Mountains, Fleet Admiral Chen materialized via teleportation pad. She removed her uniform jacket and poured herself a whiskey, looking out through the quantum-enhanced windows at the planet that had rebuilt itself a dozen times over in 3 centuries. Marcus, her chief strategic advisor and one of the AIs who had chosen to take human form, appeared beside her. "How do you think they took it?" "Badly," Chen said with a slight smile. "Which means perfectly." They needed to understand that the universe doesn't revolve around their council, that there are powers out there they can't negotiate with or bureaucratize into submission. "You think it'll stick?" "For a while. Long enough for us to finish the Gateway project, at least. Once we've established permanent connections to the Andromeda and Triangulum galaxies, the Milky Way will be even less relevant to us." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we were too harsh?" Chen considered the question carefully. 17 million people, Marcus. Men, women, children. They died because the galaxy couldn't be bothered to act. No, we weren't too harsh. If anything, we were merciful. The old humanity, the one that existed before the isolation, would have burned the council chamber to the ground and salted the earth. We just gave them a wake-up call. And if they don't wake up, then next time, we won't be so gentle. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's intervention rippled outward. The freed species began to rebuild, many of them incorporating human technology and philosophy into their new societies. The Krell, leaderless and defeated, fractured into smaller states, some of which began to question the culture of conquest that had defined them. The council continued its debates, but something had changed. There was a new awareness, a sense that the universe was larger and more complex than they had believed. Some species began to reform their militaries, realizing that the galaxy could no longer rely on distance and diplomacy alone for protection. And everywhere, in 100 ports and 10,000 conversations, people spoke of the humans, the species that had vanished and returned, the species that had transcended, the species that remembered. On the Orbital Museum, above New Brasilia, senior historian Krenz added a new chapter to his comprehensive history of humanity. He titled it The Reckoning. "For 3 centuries, he wrote, we wondered what humanity was doing behind their barrier. We speculated that they had destroyed themselves or evolved beyond physical form, or simply lost interest in a galaxy that had disappointed them. We were wrong on all counts. Humanity was training, growing, preparing. They were becoming what they needed to be to survive in a universe that had proven itself indifferent to their suffering. And when they returned, they brought with them a message that the galaxy desperately needed to hear, that there must be consequences for evil, that someone must stand against the darkness when others won't, and that humanity, strange, violent, creative, compassionate humanity, would be that someone. They didn't return to join us. They returned to remind us what we had lost when we failed them. And in doing so, they showed us what we might become if we can find the courage to be better." Cringe saved the file and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond his ability to see, the human fleets were returning to their own projects, their own galaxies, their own future. Earth had vanished from the stars once, a disappearance that had seemed like an ending. Its return had been cataclysmic. But perhaps, Cringe thought, it had also been necessary. Perhaps the galaxy had needed to see what happened when it failed to live up to its own ideals. Perhaps humanity's rage, however terrible, was the mirror the Council needed to see its own failures. He began work on his next project, a proposal to the Council for a memorial to the 17 million humans who had died in the Krell raids. It seemed like a small gesture, inadequate to the weight of the tragedy, but it was a start. Because if there was one thing Krenz had learned from studying humanity, it was this: remembrance mattered. Memory mattered. And perhaps, if the galaxy could learn to remember the way humans did, it might finally become something worthy of the stars it inhabited. The Earth had vanished from the stars once and returned changed beyond recognition. The question now was whether the galaxy could do the same. Time would tell. But one thing was certain: humanity would be watching.